Well, if I asked you to nominate the standard career path for an Australian executive, I'm sure that a transition from fighter pilot to CEO wouldn't be at the top of the list. And yet, for our Performance with Purpose interview, myself and Robert Gottliebsen are speaking with former RAAF pilot Jim Whalley. Now today Jim is steering Nova Systems, an Adelaide-based engineering contractor working primarily in the defence and aerospace industries. To begin with, I asked Jim how he was able to take what he'd learned in the cockpit and put it to use in the boardroom.
It was different, but I figured also that business couldn't be that different to combat. So there were some good analogies there, and I think particularly in the test flying community, you have small teams working together. You are solving problems, whilst there's often a perception the military is very rigorous and follows a very strong set of methodologies. The test flying community, there is, I think, a lot of initiative, a lot of innovation required to sort out some of the problems, to do some of the testing we do. And so I think it just carried on a lot of that background I had into a different sector and a different sphere.
You said about 60% of the things you've done haven't succeeded.
Yeah.
Is there a culture in Australia, do you believe, that vilifies failure?
I think there is. I mean, I think if you look at the political situation, for example, as soon as a mistake's made, then it's fair game for all. And I think it's been reasonably refreshing with Malcolm Turnbull that he's come in and talked about innovation and talked about the fact that if we try something that doesn't work, well then we'll do something else. And that's part of problem solving, that's part of innovation, and I really like that attitude, and I hope the Prime Minister is able to get that down into to other sectors of the economy.
There was a great quote the other day I heard from Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon, who said that Amazon's the best place in the world to fail.
Yeah, absolutely, and in fact, and that's really, really critical, because when you do have a mistake, you don't want people looking over their back waiting for the knife to come out. They've got to be looking forward to say, right, what have I learned out of that, and how can I take that into my next venture? And I think that's absolutely critical. And we do have an issue sometimes in Australia. If people fail, they become pariahs. If they succeed, they must have cheated or done something wrong.
What was your biggest failure?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'd like to think that there hasn't been any really massive ones, but there's just been a whole lot of little ones along the way. And I think when I've realised generally that things were going pear-shaped, I've said, let's cut that now and move on to something else. So, it's one of those things in aviation that you don't want to make a mistake that'll kill you. You make mistakes all the time. And I'd like to think I make mistakes all the time. Generally, they'll just embarrass me. And not actually kill me or kill them.
You run quite a big organisation, right? So the question is, how do you institutionalise that attitude in your company? What physical things, specific things, do you do to make failure acceptable?
I let everyone in the company see the CEO in action, and that's part of it. So whenever I've had a screw up, I've made that clear to everyone in the organisation and said, we've had a screw up, my fault, and people understand that that's part of how we do business. So I think there's a degree of honesty, integrity, and just saying it doesn't work all the time.
That's easier to do in a private company than it is in a public company.
Totally. And there's no question at all, because I started the company with Pete, or Pete and I started the company, that we've been able to inculcate that from the start. And I find it fascinating when we have people come in from other organisations. It generally takes, particularly larger organisations into our company, it takes them usually a couple of months to get used to the fact that if they screw something up, no one's going to come after them. I'm talking about if they've done everything that they should have and prepared. If they've just been lazy or not prepared or done the right thing, then I will be after them and please explain. But if they have, with the best of their abilities and with the knowledge at hand, committed down a path and it has not gone right for all sorts of reasons, and if I can honestly sit there and say, I would have done exactly the same thing, and this has happened on several occasions, you can't can them, and hopefully they've learned a lesson out of it that will make them a better leader, manager, and an innovator.
And you say that when you've made a mistake, recognise it early and get out.
Yeah, I think that's
change or something.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to embark on a venture, it's really important to pick the hard stuff to do first. If you've got a whole lot of things you need to do, don't leave the hard stuff till the end, because you can do all the easy stuff first, and then you get to the end and say, you know what, we can't do this. So if you get people working on the hard stuff and say, yep, if we can solve that problem, the rest will just flow. And if you can't, say, this is not going to work now, the technology is not there, we don't have the capability, store it away.